5 years ago, when I was still working in my old job as a graphic artist, I used to ride the subway every morning to get to work. At the time, I was also running a blog about art that was bringing in about $1,000 a month. $1,000 a month was a lot of money for me at the time, and so I worked around the clock to continue earning from two sources of income, my day and night job. I don't know if it helped any, but I always tried to make up for the lack of sleep by sleeping in the subway car, because I figured 40 minutes of slumber was better than nothing. So this one morning, I fell asleep without exception, but the only problem being, I fell in a real deep slumber. I somehow miraculously woke up right as the subway car came to a stop at the station I was supposed to get off. I fumbled around to grab my bag and quickly got up to try to get to the door, but I was half asleep and took a tumble on my knees. It hurt like a bitch, but I pretended like it was nothing because I was so freaking embarrassed. I went to work, took the elevator to the 7th floor, and saw something baffling when I walked to the door to my office. There's supposed to be a sign that says advertising department, but there wasn't. In fact, there was no sign at all. I opened the door and found an empty office. I couldn't understand it. If we were moving office, I would have been told, or at the very least, there would be some kind of a notice on the door about the move. But anyway, I figured the department head was just being himself, the complete idiot that he is. And so I went to the lobby to ask about the new office. I go up to the lady working at the information desk and say, "Hi, can you tell me which floor the CNC Corporation moved their operation to?" To which she responded right away, "I'm sorry, sir, but there's no CNC Corporation in this building." I was a little annoyed that she didn't even check on her computer or some type of log. Even so, I tried to be civil and said, "Ma'am, I don't recognize you, so I assume you're new here. The thing is, I've been working in this building for almost 3 years now, and so it'd be kind of tough for me to be mistaken about my company existing within this building. If you can kindly check on your computer and tell me which floor CNC Corp has moved, I would truly appreciate it." That's when her tone changed to a little more hostile manner and responded, "I can say the same thing about you because I don't recognize you either. And I've been working on this same desk for the past 9 years. I recognize every single person who works in this building, but I don't recognize you. Now, that computer isn't going to tell me anything differently from what I know, so please look for CNC Corporation somewhere else." I got kicked out of the building, and the next thing I did was to call the only coworker whose number was saved in my cell phone. I called him up, but as it turns out, the number belonged to someone else. That was impossible because my coworker and I speak on the phone on a regular basis. But the person on the other line told me that she had the number for several years already. Things were starting to get freaky. I called mom's number after that, but the phone number wasn't even registered. I began panicking and wondered if I was going insane. I first had to go home to be in a place that's most familiar to me, and so I got back on the train, then headed toward home. Even though I was freaking out for the initial few minutes of the train ride, I soon recovered the cool demeanor, then finally relaxed a little. Some 10-15 minutes into the ride, I felt sleepy and nodded off again. No amount of adrenaline was going to keep me awake after having slept only 3 hours the previous night. That was especially true while on a train ride. I woke up when the train jerked a little harshly, and soon it began to approach a station. When I was completely awake, I realized the train was going in the direction that would take me to work. But I was supposed to be going in the opposite direction. Then I saw the sign of the station and found out it was the station where I normally get off when I go to work. It was mind-boggling. I mean, you have no idea how I felt when I saw that sign. I got up, and as I was straightening my legs, I felt a sharp pain in my right knee and almost knelt down from the pain. I struggled but kept walking and got back to the office building again. I checked the clock on my phone as I stood in front of the building because people were walking in as if I had arrived at work on time. I couldn't believe my eyes. The time was 8:50 a.m. Think about it. What happened to the time I spent at the office building initially? What about going back to the train, the ride on the train, and getting back to the office? How am I back at the office building on time? It didn't make any sense until I saw the lady working at the information desk, and she was not the same person I spoke to earlier. It was a familiar face, Sue, who's been working the desk for as long as I worked in this building. I hobbled into the building, then up to the floor where my office is supposed to be. And voila, it's right there. The sign on the door, the desks and chairs inside, everything was where they were supposed to be. I walked to my desk, sat on the chair, then folded my pants up to my knees. I was bleeding from the right knee and the surrounding skin was red in color, like I fell on it just minutes ago. I have no clue what happened to me that morning. The most realistic explanation would be that I dreamt everything about my initial experience at the office. But then how do you explain the wound on my knee? How do you dream of getting hurt and transfer the wound incurred from it into real life? I don't know how it happened, but I somehow ended up in an alternate reality and then came back to my own. Or did I? How do I know this isn't a world that's nearly identical to mine and I just happened to end up here by luck? Will I end up in some other reality tomorrow? Maybe the next time I fall asleep? These are the type of questions I wrestle with every day, and thanks to the stress, I haven't been the same person since the incident. Even now I wonder, would I be submitting this story to you or to another you in a different reality? Do you ever dream of a life that you know you could never have? Like, for example, going from a minimum wage burger flipper to, say, a CEO of a major corporation. Or perhaps getting married to that girl from high school you never had a chance with instead of settling for that girl who just happened to like you. Well, believe it or not, that's sort of what happened to me recently. I went to sleep one night as a customer service agent for an insurance company, but then woke up as a deputy general manager for the same company. There's a rare mental condition that would explain my current situation, but I really don't think I'm crazy. I remember the conversations I had with customers over the phone. I can recall specific cases in which the customers were real assholes, and in some instances when the cases had to be escalated for the manager to handle. If I were crazy, would I still remember those things? I'm talking about very specific conversations that I can recall. What about Mandy? That's my wife in my former life, and I remember everything that we did on our first date, especially because we ended up sleeping together. I've got memories in my head that span 29 years of my life, and yet none of them matter today because none of those things happened in my current life. I'm currently married to Julia, the girl who I fell in love with when I first began working for my company. I remember like it was yesterday, 2 years after I started working in this company, Julia was showered with congratulations from every coworkers because she was getting married to her boyfriend of 3 years. And would you like to hear something even more crazy? I have no clue what I'm doing at work. This wasn't my job. I used to answer phone calls and never had anyone working for me. I guess you can say that I'm learning while on the job, and it helps that I'm working for the same company at least. But I don't know until when I can pull this off without getting fired out of my ineptitude. I'm just a simple guy who works the phone 9 to 5, who barely graduated college with a bachelor's degree. I'm not qualified to work as a deputy general manager. It's easy to think that what I'm going through would be a dream scenario for anyone who hasn't made much out of themselves, but in reality, this is scary as hell. Everyone feels like a stranger here. Even my parents and siblings are different in many ways. The memories of everyone I know do not match with the memories of the respective people in those memories. Does that make sense? So basically, certain memories that I have of my sister, for example, never happened here, so my sister does not possess that memory. I can give you examples of so many logical reasons as to why I don't believe for a second that I'm crazy. I feel stuck here, and all I want really is to go back to my simple life. As the days pass, I lose more and more hope of returning to my real place. I'm trying to adjust and make the best out of this situation, but what can I tell you? It doesn't get easier with time. I miss my real friends, my family, my real life. I wish I can say that I'm crazy so I can just accept that this is my life and that I should relearn to live it, but I know this isn't my life, and regardless of how well I adjust here, I'll never be truly happy living a lie. My story is really short, so I'm not really sure that you might even read it. But hopefully you will, because you might just find it interesting. It was a couple of weeks before Christmas, and I was in the city doing some shopping. It's a familiar place. It's the same shopping district I've been going ever since I was a kid. I was walking down Broad Avenue when my cell phone rang. So I checked the number, it was Mom, and answered the call. I was doing two things at once. On one hand, I was looking for a new store that had opened a month before, and at the same time, I was teaching my mom how to save a new number on her cell phone. I swear to God, I totaled like 50 times, but she asks again every time she has to save a new number. I'm walking and talking, and as you know, the male brain doesn't handle multitasking all that well. I bumped into another person because I wasn't fully paying attention to my surroundings, and for maybe 5 seconds, everything on the street looked different. It was just a few seconds, but I'm telling you, I was not in the same place. The street looked futuristic. No, actually, everything looked more futuristic. The road, the traffic lights, the cars, and even the clothes on the people looked different. It lasted for such a brief moment that I barely had any time to react. I just kept walking with my mouth wide open like I had seen God. Then bump, I ran into another person on the street. I actually bumped into another person. Then it was just gone, or should I say I was gone from that other world I was in ever so briefly. Did I see something that wasn't there? I really don't think so, because everything was so real. This kind of thing never happened to me before, and I'm really not the type to believe in theoretical stuffs. I enjoy these types of stories, but I don't necessarily believe in them. That is, until it happened to me. I wish I could have taken a picture of the place, or at least had the chance to see it for a longer period. But that was pretty much it. It's by far the most fascinating thing that ever happened to me, and I wanted to put my story out there to see if anyone else had a similar experience to mine. I hope you found my story worth a read and also worth publishing. Thanks for your time, Dennis. Working as an importer of antiques, I get to travel a lot around the world. 3 years ago, I was flying from Denver to London. We took off at 5:45 p.m. Denver time, and it was really dark outside after 3 or 4 hours into the flight. I was in first class in a window seat and was going through the list of things I need to get done once I arrive in London. By the way, the seat was one of those personal pod-like things, one that separates you from the other passengers completely. This is important to point out because the area I was seated was fairly dark. I didn't have the TV on, and it seemed like the other passengers were also relaxing and sleeping in the dark. My eyes were of course fixated on my notebook, when from the corner of my eye, I could have sworn I seen a light streaking across the black sky. Holy shit, UFO, I thought for a second. Then I returned to the notebook and continued working. Sometime later, several passengers in the first class cabin began talking loudly. I got curious, so I poked my head above the wall of the pod and saw a bright ball of light on the opposite side of the windows. I could genuinely feel the fear in everyone's voices. We didn't know if this was a top secret jet fighter or if it was a UFO. I could hear the panic spread throughout the different cabins, and then we heard a flight attendant speak over the intercom, ordering the passengers to get back in their seats. Walking back to my seat, I got a hold of a flight attendant and asked her if she knew anything about the ball of light outside. She just said that the captain would make an announcement shortly and that we had nothing to worry about. I went back to my seat, took a long drawn-out breath, and thought to myself that this could be it. I leaned back on the chair, got comfortable, then put on the eye mask. I don't know if that was me panicking at the time or if I was actually at peace with the end, but my logic at the time was that if I was going to die, I didn't want to see it coming and rather not know how I died if possible. Then suddenly there was a bright light penetrating through every windows of the plane. The light was so bright that it was blinding me through the eye mask even with my eyes closed. It lasted for about 10 seconds, or at least that's how I perceived the flow of time, because when I took off the eye mask, there was daylight outside. Shortly thereafter, there was an announcement made that we were landing in London. It didn't make any sense. We had to fly for at least another 5 hours to arrive in London. And on top of that, it was nighttime outside just minutes ago. I called for the flight attendant, and when she came by, I asked, "Do you remember me asking you about the ball of light outside the window? We spoke only minutes ago." She responded, "I'm sorry, sir, I actually don't." I was really confused at this point, but also knew I had to be careful how I worded my questions, so I asked again. "I don't remember going to sleep, and the last thing I remember is seeing something strange outside the window. That was about 5 hours ago, but I have no memory of anything that happened within that time. Do you remember anything from the last 5 hours?" She stood there thinking for at least 10 seconds, then answered, "That's really strange. I don't really remember much." She then put on a really awkward smile and said, "I think I've logged way too many hours this week, and you, sir, probably have slept through the last 5 hours. We both should be getting some good rest when we touch down." She patted the top of my hand, then looked at me and smiled. This was just her trying to be professional, but I could see right through her. She was just as troubled as I was. We both knew something wasn't right, but neither of us knew exactly what it was. The plane landed, and as I was boarding off, I saw the faces of the other passengers in first class. We all had the same expression on our face, that look of suppressed fear, unnaturally trying to look calm and relaxed. We've all been programmed so thoroughly to self-censor in order to avoid being labeled social pariahs that none of us were willing to say something, anything. And that was it. That was the end of it. I took care of business in London, then flew back to Denver in fear, although nothing happened on the way back. I still fly at least twice a month every month, but I haven't experienced anything remotely as bizarre as what happened on the flight to London. I gather from my experience that a lot of strange things happen every day around the world, but we never hear about those things because nobody is willing to talk. I know this because I've never spoken of my experience to anyone. I would have never sent you my story if there was any chance of my identity being revealed. The experience has made me wonder far more about free will than the existence of aliens. Whoever or whatever think tank came up with this social norm thing, it's a work of genius. It really makes you wonder if we do things out of our own discretion or if we do them because we are programmed to live in a certain way. I'll tell you this much, I've never looked at life with the same perspective since that day. Quite simply, free will is but an illusion. That is the end of this video, ladies and gentlemen. A big thank you goes out to Lance, Joe, Kian, and Dean for sending in their stories. I'm a huge sucker for these types of stories, and I must say, I've very much enjoyed all four of them. I can't say this enough, so I'll say it again. This channel exists thanks to you guys submitting your stories, and also in much part due to your willingness to put yourself through what's often an hour-long interview with me via Skype. I appreciate you taking the time to write and send me your stories, so thank you so much, everyone. My email address is always displayed in the video description, so if any of you have got some cool stories for me, please don't hesitate to send them my way. Alright, so let's continue with this topic of alternate reality, loss of time, and glitch in the Matrix. I also had something very funky happen to me one time. This was back when I lived in Chicago, so it's about 3-4 years ago. From what I can recall, I was walking on Belle Plaine Avenue toward Lincoln Avenue. I know, it's strange going from avenue to avenue, but that part of the city is kind of messy how the roads are laid out. My buddy and I were going to eat at a Korean restaurant called Chosunok. It was very close from my buddy's apartment, so we walked instead of taking the car. I remember the specific conversation we had because I was telling him about a new server at my restaurant, this really hot Pinay, a Filipina. I took a selfie with her the previous day, and so I was showing him her photo and whatnot. Now, keep in mind that my friend had actually commented on how smoking hot she was, and he actually asked me if I could set him up with her. The entire conversation happened in between the entrance of his apartment and by the corner of Belle Plaine and Lincoln Avenue, where those two roads meet, so we're talking about 2/3 lengths of an average city block. I guess that would be about, what, 30 seconds of walk? So anyways, we turned the corner to get on Lincoln Avenue, and I remember the exact words I spoke to him as I said, I don't date coworkers anyway, so I'll show her your picture, it's only fair, and I'll set you up with her if she's interested. The way my buddy responded still boggles my mind till this day, because he said, "What?" I won't drag out the story with the full conversation. Basically, what was happening was he didn't remember any of the conversation we had during the 30-odd seconds we walked from his apartment to Lincoln Avenue. I thought he was bullshitting me at the time, but he swore to me that he didn't know anything about a hot coworker of mine, and even till this day, he maintains that it's no bullshit. I've known Gary since my freshman year in high school. We've been friends forever, so of course we break each other's balls all the time. Does it sound weird? No, we don't have that kind of relationship. I'm cool with my gay brethren and my lesbian sisters, but I'm just saying, I'm not gay. But yeah, what I'm trying to say is, Gary, is a great dude, but he's got a simple mind. What up, Gary? He's not the type to prank me with something like that, especially not for 3 years. He's just not that bright. We've known each other forever, so I know when he's talking out of his ass, and he too, vice versa. So what we're left with are, 1, I could have imagined the whole conversation. 2, Gary's brain stopped working for 30 seconds. 3, maybe I wasn't talking to Gary? I can't say exactly what it is because I don't know what it was. But needless to say, it was one of the most bizarre things that has ever happened to me. And with that, we'll wrap up this video. Please be sure to share your own funky stories, if short, in the comment section, but if it's long enough, then do send it over to me at mrcreepymaster1@gmail.com. Thank you guys for listening. Hugs and kisses to my female viewers. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Fist bump to my bro viewers. Kusha, kusha, kusha. What am I doing? I'll talk to you guys on the next video. Goodbye.